tomorrow we're going. I think tomorrow or Tuesday we're going to yes, just a shop, a store to see the furniture displayed. So it'll be nice.
Would you also be visiting some energy companies here?
Energy companies, no, we are not, but we are visiting university and
Sorry, where are you visiting?
we are visiting yes, it's tomorrow we're going to QMA's flagship store.
Nice.
And Tsinghua University.
Okay.
The
best university.
I don't know how to
Yeah,
pronounce
that's
it.
Tsinghua. Yeah.
Tsinghua.
Actually, QMA is pronounced Chumei.
Chumei.
That's confusing.
No, the phonemic languages are very hard. Okay, I'll go and check on the minister and we'll be right back.
哦，对对对，他们这次带了一个340人的商贸代表团，对，叫做可能是挪威商贸代表外访团之最，可以问一下他们有什么
采访经验？
没有，就问一下他们希望带这些人来达成什么，对。
就不把它当成建立信任的问题。只有20分钟。
哦，对，其实也没有什么可问的，看他语速。哎，我觉得挪威人一般讲英语还挺快的。
看有没有废话，这要看个人。我觉得常问他们去看什么公司，也可以看一些something。我的挪威专员说，这个 Echo Nest 是一个比较中端的品牌，也没有特别好。哦。但是它这个价钱其实非常高的，很多钱。他们也不知道为什么40多亿人民币为什么这么贵。People want to get into the
They're actually the most popular employer in Myanmar, but also in Pakistan. I think they're very high up on the list. I think they have a different brand name in Pakistan, Telenor. It doesn't matter.
Thank you for accepting our.
No problem. Thank you for giving me a chance to say something.
Okay, let's start. So since the normalization of Norwegian-Chinese relations, we can say that Chinese and Norwegian two-way trade investment woke up. During the media briefing last week about this visit, I was told by the Norwegian ambassador to China that for the first 6 months of this year, Norwegian export to China rose 682% on a year-over-year basis. And besides salmon, can you introduce to us what other areas of trade and investment also seen significant growth?
Yes, I can yeah, you can give me the list as well. But so traditionally, just to start a bit back, so traditionally it's been Norway has exported a lot seafood, but also raw materials actually to China, and we've imported a lot of consumer electronics, computers, cell phones, things like that back. But one of the exciting things now is that that's changing, and it's changing both due to the Chinese economy, which is in a way, summed up by the slogan from "made in" to "invented in" China. So the Chinese economy is becoming a lot more sophisticated, and Norway's economy is sophisticated mainly for the reason that we're a small, expensive country, high wages, so we have to be very high up in the value chain in order to make money. So what you're seeing with more than, I think, about 40 deals or contracts being signed during this visit is more tech collaboration, both when it comes to financial technology, it could be environmental technology, the maritime sector, we're quite compatible when it comes to that. There's a long-standing relationship between Chinese shipyards and Norwegian shipyards, where a lot of the main construction, for example, is done in China, whilst the equipment and things like that are finished in Norway. The interesting new areas, I think, that are when it comes to health and healthcare business is one area that there's a lot of focus on. If you want the more detailed figures, like what exactly are the products or the reasons why it's gone up, we have that as well. But we can dig it up for you. Yeah.
You said 40 or so deals made during this visit. Is this...
Well, 40 signings, they're different. Like, some of them are more, like, there's, yeah.
I just wonder if this is, like, done by the 340 delegates from Norway, or is it intergovernmental deals?
No, this is mostly, I mean, these are mostly business deals. Yeah. So a couple of them are like city-to-city friendship, cooperation. That's just a few. So the vast amount are business-to-business deals.
Okay. We also want to know a little more about the negotiation process between Norway and China in terms of FTA.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're told that during this visit there won't be much progress in
No,
FTA
because there was so just to answer that specifically, and then perhaps a few words about it more broadly. So there was a negotiating round in Beijing just 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I mean, we'll touch on it in all the bilateral meetings I have, and perhaps also in some of the meetings where I'm accompanying their Majesties together with the foreign minister. I might mention it, but it's not really. It's such a detailed negotiation that it's not really the time and the place to try to lift it up. We can talk about it broadly on a political level, but it's really like a detailed, quite broad negotiation. Technical as well is good. Thank you. But the broader picture, I think, is that it will be, first of all, it's important for Norway. We're a small export-oriented economy. I mean, we're 5 million people. But still, if you look at our GDP, we're quite high. I mean, we have a lot to offer in that way. But it's important for us. It's one of our #1 priorities, both for our businesses, but also foreign policy-wise. But also, I think that it's an important signal, even though both China and Norway stress the multilateral trade agreements like WTO, for example, and are concerned with maintaining a rules-based system. It's also an important signal in a time when a lot of forces are attacking trade, and when there's a very there's a caricature, not a character, caricature.
Yeah, I
You know
know
the
that
phrase,
word.
right? Caricature. Yeah. So like it's trade is being painted as something bad, whilst FTA, the reason we're doing it is because it's possible to have a win-win situation. We're doing it because it's good both for Norway and it's good for China. So I think it will be an important political signal to send as well. And my impression is that there's, from the meetings I've had with Chinese counterparts in Norway, there's strong will on the Chinese side and the Norwegian side to get this through and to finish it. We don't know exactly when. I mean, we won't be finished within a day or two. It's not just a couple of details left, but we have hope that this is not going to be like a year on negotiating round.
Like, for example, can you tell us if Norway is trying to achieve a zero tariff target on Norwegian salmon exports to China?
So we don't go into like our concrete negotiating positions, unfortunately. All I can say when it comes to that is that, of course, we're trying to achieve the best possible access to the Chinese market for Norwegian seafood, for example, which is, of course, I mean, Norway's economy. We don't have seafood as sort of the symbol in a way of a lot of what we want to sell to the world, but of course the Norwegian economy has a lot more to offer than just Norwegian salmon. But that's important as well. But it's also just going back to trade and how it's being viewed internationally, and looking at, for example, what the U.S. is doing now. It's interesting, I think, for the world to note that Norway, for example, already has zero tariffs on most of our industrial imports. So we don't have tariffs on computers coming from China, or on cell phones, etc., and a lot of other products. And why do we do that? Not just because our economies are quite compatible, so we don't produce a lot of cell phones, but also because trade isn't about. It's not the case that high barriers are always good for. I mean, trade barriers aren't good for Norwegians either, because I mean it's to our benefit that we can export a lot of products, and for Norwegian consumers, it's to their benefit as well. But that, of course, means that when we sit down at the negotiating table with any country, including China, it's we've already unilaterally given all countries access when it comes to industrial products. Almost zero tariffs on any area.
How do you evaluate the impact brought by China-U.S. trade war on China and Norwegian
Relations. Well, I don't think direct. First, I'm concerned about it becoming a trade war, but I think it's important to say that it's not a trade war per se at the time, currently. But directly it won't have an impact because, of course, it will be tariffs increase between China and the United States, and of course, if we get a free trade agreement and negotiate that as well, that will make it even easier to have a good and fruitful relationship with China. But the worry, of course, for every country in the world, and especially I think for small export-oriented economies like Norway, is that when the two biggest economies in the world get into a conflict, it will some way or another influence the world economy, and indirectly it might influence us as well. I can give you an example if you just stop me when I talk too much. For example, we have very low exports of steel and aluminum to the United States, so it doesn't really hurt us that bad with the tariffs that the U.S. imposed. But the EU then, their answer is, okay, so we're worried that excess steel and aluminum will come into the EU market, and then that will be unfair competition towards EU producers. So they decided to raise their steel and aluminum tariffs as well. That's a problem for Norway, because that would mean 70% of our steel and aluminum go to the EU. so it's just an example. We got an exemption from the EU, but it's just an example of how a trade conflict between the two biggest economies will indirectly also threaten a country like Norway, even if we have good relations with China and good relations with the US, though we disagree with the US on their tariff policies currently. I have to
Now, talking
emphasize.
about indirect impact, we wonder that the new NAFTA agreements puts limits on its members negotiating free trade agreements with non-market economies. Will this have an impact on the FTA negotiations
No.
between?
No.
Not whatsoever.
Clear and simple answer. No.
Okay.
I can't see how that will have an impact.
When we look at the investment figure in the in EU, we can see that Norway receive a relatively low level of Chinese investment among the region. So I wonder how do you evaluate the Norwegian's need for Chinese investment, and does the Norwegian government has a plan to attract more Chinese capital into the
Well, we don't have a specific plan to attract more Chinese investment, but we have a plan to make us even more attractive for foreign investment. But we don't have specific plans for specific countries. And so, but there are some. I mean, there is quite a bit of Chinese investment in Norway, and there are some high-profile buy-ups as well, including investments. But so far, I think, and also the FTA will obviously make that easier. Both investments in China and investments in Norway from the Chinese side. But I don't think so. We do want more investment. We do want more Chinese investment as well. But I don't think Norway has the same acuteness when it comes to investment that a lot of the other European countries might feel, which is probably due to, for example, in infrastructure, for example, which is probably due to the very healthy stage of our public finances, which is also to do with our sovereign wealth fund and the way we've managed our oil and gas resources. So Norway might be in a bit of a different situation, but that's not does not mean that we don't want to attract more investment. One of the things we've done, for example, is we have quite competitive tax rates. We've lowered now the company tax rate to the last proposition is 22 or 23. I always forget. It's 23% now. It's yeah.
So does Norway has plans to participate in the OBOR initiative further?
The OBOR.
The
One Belt One Road?
Yes. This
But-
is yes. This is mainly actually the foreign ministry, so we don't have a lot directly to do with the Belt and Roads initiative. Du sier det gjerne på norsk. Du kan bare si det på norsk til meg. Nei. Nei, men det er jo utenriksministeriet som er det ikke det? Ja. We haven't officially said yes or no to it.
Okay.
That's the answer. But it's a shared responsibility both for the foreign ministry and probably a bit for us as well. But it would probably be mostly the foreign ministry.
So how do Norwegian businesses view the friendliness of the Chinese investment environment? Like, apart from tariff barriers, do they feel there's a lot of non-tariff barriers?
I think that, first of all, I think that everybody is amazed at just the development in China the last 20 years, which has been probably in human history. It's quite unique, just the rapidness of it and the massive growth that we've had. So and obviously also a huge consumer market, but also the increasingly sophisticated Chinese economy, where, for example, when it comes to technological areas like artificial intelligence, for example, China is a global leader, or at least one of the global leaders. So I think that's no doubt, and that's a huge part of the attraction to the Chinese market is, of course, that it's not just, when we started this discussion in Europe 15 years ago, it was all about the consumer market. Now it's not just about that, it's also about developing sophisticated technological solutions, having cooperations, business to business, and all kinds of aspects. And I think that in the same period that the business climate in China has become a lot better as well for foreign investors. But there are some worries still. I mean, and this is a lot of Norwegian companies have had trouble. They've invested, but they've had trouble like really getting access and building up their businesses in China. There have been, and I think this is more a thing of the past, but demands on having like local partners or local businesses that have made it less attractive in a way to invest in China. There's also a perception that, for example, when it comes to seafood, that there are not a lot of, or there are some non-tariff barriers that are still difficult to get across. We can give you more details on that as well. So I think that to sum it up, there's optimism. There's also great willingness to come into the Chinese market, but there's also a clear sense that the stability for property rights, intellectual property, for investments, the actual possibility to expand as a foreign investment company in China has to be real.
Did you talk to the 340 delegates from Norway?
All of them. Personally, yeah.
So, what's your feeling from your talks with them? How they view the prospects of investing in China?
I think that I think first I think after the normalization of the relationship between Norway and China, I think that there has been a huge outburst of optimism. So everybody's very happy that we can finally get down to talking about trade, for example, or investment and things like that. So there's great optimism. I think there's also a feeling that because of the period of time where we didn't have a normal relationship with China, that some Norwegian businesses are in a way lagging behind other countries. So there's an impatience there as well. But I also think that there's also I think a clear expectation that that China will continue to improve conditions for foreign companies and foreign investment in China. And I think currently, that it's fair to call it an expectation. So people expect that to get better. Or to continue to get better, and I think that's important for any country to attract foreign investment. It's important for Norway as well. I mean, one of the things that is probably our main asset when it comes to foreign investment, apart from being a knowledge-based economy and highly educated population and things like that, is just a fair level of stability and transparency for the companies investing in Norway.
recently we have seen.
Like 4 more minutes.
Okay. We have seen some European companies are discussing strengthening their mechanism to screen the foreign investment in strategic areas
yeah.
or infrastructure. I wonder if
Yeah.
Norwegian has such discussion or plans.
Yes, we have recently passed a new security law in Norway, which gives us the details of the, I don't know the English word for it, forskrift. What is that? Oh, okay. So the law has been passed, and the details of the regulation is being worked out now. But that will allow Norway to, if there is a clear national security issue at stake, to say no even to private companies buying private companies. Yes.
When was the law passed?
It's passed a year and a half ago, I think. Sikkerhetsloven.
Last year, I think.
Last year.
2017.
Okay. Yes. So last year.
In terms of attracting foreign investment, what are the priority areas for Norwegian government?
Well, I think so the main priority, like economically for us, is to diversify our economy more. The good news for Norway is that we've handled our oil and gas wealth very well. So we're not like other countries who have a natural resource curse. And Norway's economy is, if you consider the oil and gas resources we have, has fared fairly well outside the oil and gas sector as well. But we need to diversify more, so we need to build up new sectors that are not just directly reliant on oil and gas prices. So that's our main political job. And a part of that is also to attract foreign investment. But it has to be said that a lot of that is also attracting foreign investment within companies. So, for example, the Chinese own. There are Chinese owners of a lot of Norwegian high power. How do you say also kraftkrevende industri? There are some English terms, I don't know. So power-based industries, like traditional power-based industries, like aluminum, for example, I mean, is one example, where one of the struggles is not to get the factories in Norway, but to get the extra investment competing with the same company's factories in 10 other countries. But what we've done is we've streamlined the gateway into Norway for investors through one agency. We have a competitive tax rate. We're not a tax haven by any means, but a competitive tax rate. We've vastly increased our spending on research and development. We're spending now consecutively over 3 or 4 years more than 1% of GDP from the public sector side, just public money alone on research and development, and also reforms of education in an already high education society. So I think those are the areas where we want more foreign investment. I could expand on that, but one of our challenges as well is that we have a lot of startups in tech, for example, and things like that, but we're not good enough at growing them. So we want foreign investors not just to, ideally they would not just buy up the businesses and move them out, but like keep the businesses and develop them in Norway as well.
Could you share with us what is your vision for China-Norway cooperation in Arctic issues, and what are the priority areas?
I think first, I think it's very good that China sees itself as a near Arctic nation. I think it's part of it's a very important area for any country actually, but especially for a country who wants to play a constructive role on the global scene. And I visited the Chinese research station at Svalbard, the part of Norway. It's an island almost at the North Pole where there's a Chinese research base, together with an American one and an establish one, and yeah. And I think that the goal should be to have a long-term, or to include China in a stable and long-term commitment to using the resources we have in the north in a sustainable manner. I think that's important. I think one of the dangers is that we view it just as a national park, but it's important for, a lot of Norwegians live in the Arctic. So it's important to actually, not on the North Pole, but they live above the Arctic Circle. So it's important not just to view it as a conservationist project, but to have sustainable development there. So to use resources, but not in a manner that deteriorates culture.
Thank you.
Yes? Okay, thank you. Do you want some export figures and things like that?
Yes, please. Yes.
Kan ikke du, we have some export.
Sure.